but I know some board members are on their way. Let the record show that we had 3 board members present to join us shortly once they arrive. At this time, I move adoption of the agenda. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes 3-0-2. Next, we'll have executive session. Board members, any reason to go into executive session? All right, hearing none, seeing none, then we'll go straight into our study session for the presentation. Dr. Mendeville.
Thank you, President Garcia, Vice President Montero, Member James, executive team members, and our viewing and listening audience. Today we will be diving into a little bit more detail around some of the academic achievement for our schools. And we do this every year, but this is especially important as we look at ways in which we can improve outcomes for our students as a result of the past couple of years. So we're having this meeting mainly as a focus to bring attention to where our schools are, celebrate the areas that need celebration and attention, and then look to see for longer term planning in meeting the academic needs, the student performance needs, the credit gathering trajectory needs of our students, so we can graduate our students on time, because that's one of the biggest responsibilities that we have. So I'm going to ask that Mrs. Hilgers, our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, and Dr. Alexic, our Executive Director for Assessment, and your role has changed, or your title has changed once or twice, but nonetheless 2 experts, and we're just appreciative of the time and the effort you've put forward in the presentation, and we look forward to additional information as we move through the fall semester. Thank you.
President Garcia, members of the board, Superintendent Mendeville, and executive team members. It's our pleasure tonight to be able to share information about Tempe Union's academic achievement. Since we last spoke to the governing board, we've studied the impact that the pandemic has had on the educational achievement of our students. The pandemic has impacted growth, it's impacted proficiency, as well as enrollment and mobility across the state of Arizona. So tonight, we're going to give you a condensed analytical look of some key indicators and some data that really are derived from our ACT results and from our CCRI. As the pandemic continues in our 3rd academic year, our students, our families have continued to weather the disruption that's occurring in academics. It's written that the effect of the pandemic on learning is similar to that as a sustained headwind. And that is because it's slowing the rate at which kids progress, but it's also, because it's a slower rate, it's also limiting the progress that kids can ultimately make in school. When we look at our student achievement data, we see that some of our subgroups have a larger or experiencing notably worse declines in achievement than others. We've tried to meet these educational needs for our students. We have illness, loss, and economic hardship that the pandemic is inflicting, in addition to some of the disruptions in a school setting that negatively affect the achievement of kids, despite our fact that we returned to in-person learning a year ago. So when I look at the state level findings, we got this information when Dr. Mendeville and I went to the Helios Foundation. And across the state of Arizona, they're finding this, that the students in the early grades were experiencing larger academic impacts than those in the older grades. The student achievement in both ELA and math has been impacted, but the impact to math has been greater. More students than ever before moved among the schools in 2020-21, but at the same time, fewer students enrolled. So we saw across the state more students withdrawing. So student mobility represents a disruption in learning. Our English learners are struggling more than their English language proficient peers. This all came from Helios in the research that they've done across the state. What have we done? In response to that, few things. We want to really fully understand the impact of the pandemic on students, teachers, families, and schools. And we want to use this information to guide our decision-making. And the third thing we would like to do is create a multi-year recovery plan to respond to the disrupted learning that occurred over the last 2 years. So let's take a look. Before we delve into any of our student achievement, we want to kind of review a little bit about the accountability and how the state and federal guides that accountability efforts here.
So as we talk about our district level goals, you'll see that most of these goals are really heavily driven by the accountability system that the state uses for both federal and state accountability. So just as a reminder, the A through F letter grade is made up of ACT proficiency, which you'll see in that pie chart is 30% of the model. 20% is ACT growth. 10% is EL proficiency and growth on the AZELA assessment. 20% is split between the 4, 5, 6, and 7-year graduation rate and the 4-year graduation rate. And then 20% ties into college and career ready indicator. And so as we look at our data, we'll focus on really the heavy impact that ACT has on the accountability system and how often it's counted in all these different measures. Kind of want to remind you that ACT is a one-day assessment on one cohort of students, 11th graders, but they play a major role in the accountability system.
So last year, in response to that, we had created district goals. And what we did is we looked at student achievement, we looked at the A through F components, and we thought we identified areas that could align with state accountability and also that would impact student achievement. The 3 areas that came up had to do with ACT, CCRI, and our MTSS plan. So let's take a look at this. Our ACT, teaching and learning, spent hours creating different resources for teachers. In every single subject area, teachers have different readings that they can do to teach reading skills to kids that align with our ACT, what's going to happen in our ACT. Bell ringers were created for teachers, so at the beginning of each hour, they could do those things that align with their current curriculum. We also had practice tests. If you remember, we had 2 different practice tests for the ACT last year. What we found is we also surveyed our students. You asked us to do that. Survey, find out what were the things that we did for the ACT prep that were most useful to them. By and large, our students said, we need more practice in our classrooms. They want more and more. So we looked at that. That is one area that we did. So our teachers have fabulous resources. Should they choose to use those resources, they have them available to them. Then we look at our CCRI. And if you remember our CCI, we get blue points and we get red points. And they go into, are you college ready and are you career ready? So when they look at, are you college ready, they look at the AP and the honors courses. So what we do as a teaching and learning team, and what we're going to be doing in the next 2 weeks, is we set up meetings with each site, and we looked at their data, we analyzed it, and we share with them, this is what we believe you need to do in terms of AP and honors so that they can earn more points. What you want is students to have a balance of college readiness and career readiness. You'll see some schools do a better job. A lot of our schools, when you see our CCRI, are doing a really good job in balancing that for our students. So we look at that. That's part of the reason that we came up with some collaborative courses. That for those schools that don't have enough students for a course, that we have 2 different sites pair together, and they're able to get that same course through an online course for a teacher that's at the same time. They also look at D&F rates in any of those college courses. So you don't get any points for D's and F's. So you want to make sure that all your kids are getting A's, B's, and C's. So obviously your D and F rates affect not only the points that you get, but also it affects the credit that kids can attain. They also are looking at, so that's for your AP and honors. For your career, they look at CTE programs, and then they look at the CTE D and F rates. So what we do is we take a look at our CTE programs. You take a look and see how many concentrators you have For each program, you look to see how they do on statewide assessments. You see some programs have strengths and some programs are weaker programs. What we try and do, if we see a weaker program, we try and support and do different things for our teachers. But really, you want to make sure that your sites are offering different things, like with your feeder schools, if they have bioscience as a focus in one of their schools, you want to make sure that that high school then has bioscience courses so that those kids can matriculate through the high school level. So we look at those programs and we give them feedback on them. And then, just like the AP and honors, the DNF rates do not give them any points. The next thing we looked at had to do with our MTSS teams. And you as a governing board and as a district, we've spent lots of money on our multi-tiered system of support. We are hoping this year, by going to a 60-minute class period, that our Tier 1 interventions are done in real time during that 60-minute class. What you want, it's kind of like a triangle where you want most of your students taken care of in that Tier 1 right in the classroom. Those that don't get it might get a second one, which might be an advisory or some tutoring or things like that. A Tier 3 might look like a Title I program, or might be a reading class or a math lab that they need extended periods of time to be able to understand the content. And so we've got teams of people, from academic interventionists to dropout prevention people. We've got deans now in there. You've got your counseling staff in there. You've got more psychs in there. You've got more social workers in there. You've got Ron Denny and Sean McDonald looking at the whole social emotional part. So we've got teams of people right now that we are deploying on that. Today, Steve Threadgill and I and Dr. Mandeville went to different MTSS teams. We took a look at what they were doing. We are making some suggestions and different things to coordinate efforts in a school. We want to have some consistency throughout the district on how their MTS teams perform and what they do. What we're looking at, guys, are what we call early warning lists. And so those kids on an early warning list, and the kids that we have on our early warning list right now, are our students who are deficient in credit. At our next study session for the governing board, you'll see the number of students by campus in the areas of seniors, juniors, and sophomores, which ones are credit deficient, okay? And in what areas they're credit deficient. So with that, what we're doing is designing things not only for our summer ed. We're looking at extending time to 0 and 8th hours so that students have the ability to recoup credits during that time. We're looking at a creative one, possibly not evening school, but possibly a Wednesday school in the afternoon. So we're looking at different ways that our kids whose learning was disrupted can then went and recoup some credits. So those two things, and then we're looking at attendance. A lot of our kids had chronic attendance issues. And part of that has to do, I think, with the impact of the pandemic and on families, and they weren't in school. And when kids aren't in school, it's really hard. It's hard to learn. And you know what? Sometimes when you're ill, different things like that, or you're quarantined, there was just a disruption in learning. And so these MTSS teams look at not only the academic achievement, but they look at behavioral components, and they look at attendance components as well. So these three things, as we look at them together, provide some of the sustained support that we look at and we create within Tempe Union. So with that, we looked at state accountability. We looked at the three areas that would give us the most, and we came up with district goals. So our first goal is that 100% of our students will be proficient in math and ELA by 2025. So our state assessment, when Dr. Alexic said it's a one day with a class, that's our junior class, we've got 3 years to get our students to be proficient. So that's our goal. What you're going to see is we're going to monitor our achievement and our growth in our students throughout the year and be able to report that to you. Our second goal is that we obtain full points on proficiency and growth on the Azalea assessment. Really, that means we've got to exceed the state in proficiency and growth with that. And then third one is to obtain bonus points for proficiency on the Arizona Sci, on the AZ Sci assessment. Our fourth goal, and this is the same as it was last year, is that we want schools either do one or the other, because when you look at schools, when you disaggregate the data, Schools either need to do the first one or they need to do the second one to get more CCRI points. They need to either have a 10% increase in the number of students achieving full points on the CCRI, or they have to reduce the number of students receiving 0 points on the CCRI. You're going to see at some of our schools that number of students that have 0 increased at some of our schools over the past year. And the last goal has to do with having a 90% or higher graduation rate, or either if you're high in the graduation rate, that you try and do a 2-point increase from the prior year. And know this, with all these goals, that this applies to all of our subgroups, so that we're going to look at all of our subgroups, whether it's ethnicity, special ed, gender, Title I, EL, that we'll look at through a subgroup lens as well. Okay? So let's take a look at some of our data points, and you'll be able to see. And you've got this PowerPoint. These links are in there, so later on you're able to go in and take a look at this information should you wish.
Start with, I'm going to move this, hopefully this works. So we're going to start with ACT performance. And so this data shows you the ACT math scores across the 2 years. So we tested students in 2021 and now in 2022. So what you're seeing is the average scale score across each of our schools. We actually have state level data because the state has released their data as well. That benchmark of 22 is a benchmark set by ACT. So that's how ACT deems a student that gets a score of 22 on math or higher ready to engage in college level math. So you'll see that some of our schools are approaching that benchmark, and you'll see an increase across average scores in most of our schools. And this slide just shows the percentage improvement from one year to the next across the district and then each of the schools. So then in July, the state came together and determined cut scores that will be used in accountability. So these are cut scores that the students will not receive these on their report because the College Board produces these reports. And so they will see that benchmark of 22. But for state accountability and assigning letter grades, the state is going to use a different set of cut scores to determine whether a student is proficient or not. So they have set these cut scores for math and ELA. And ELA is a combination of reading, writing, and English. And so you'll see that a student is deemed proficient if they reach a scale score of 19 for math and ELA. So that's lower than what the ACT sets. If you remember, ACT sets it at 22 for math and I think at 21 for ELA. So 19 is deemed proficient for accountability. So when we apply these cut scores to our data in the current year, then you can see the distribution of proficiency across the district in each of the schools. So you will see that when we look at our 2022 data, about 59% of our students are not proficient in math district-wide. And then you'll see how that kind of distributed across our schools. If you remember from Mrs. Hilber's initial slide, when we looked at Helios data, this deficiency in math is a statewide trend and really a nationwide trend. And you can see how it impacts different schools differently. So the next slide shows you that same data by each of the proficiency categories. So really our goal is to reduce the percentage of students that are in that minimally proficient category. Those students bring no points in A through F. The partially proficient students actually are counted and we get partial points for them. So really our goal is, of course, to increase the percentage of students that are proficient and highly proficient, but also move as many students as possible from minimally proficient into that partially proficient category. So for ELA, the benchmark that is set by ACT is 20. So the data that you're looking at is the average scale score across the district in each of our schools. And you'll see the state level average as well. So you see that some of our schools exceed the average cut score and some of our schools get really close to that average. But then when we apply the proficiency cuts of 19 as proficient, this becomes the distribution of percent proficient versus not proficient. So the reason this data looks different is that an average is really a poor measure of central tendency. There's a lot of kids that might score really high, but there's also a lot of kids that might score really low, and so the high kids kind of pull our average higher. When we look at it by percentage proficient, you get a better picture of what proportion of students are actually below that average. So you'll see that district level, we have 52% of students that are not scoring proficient on that ELA assessment, which is a combination of really 3 categories: reading, writing, and English. So this just shows you the distribution across the 4 levels. So you'll see that the percentage of minimally proficient, and again, like in math, we're trying to reduce that number of minimally proficient, and of course increase the percentage that are proficient and highly proficient. This slide shows you the proficiency data by subgroups. So you'll see all students, English language learners, students with disabilities, and then ethnicity. So you'll see that there's differences across ethnicities, and most of our data really follows the state and really the national trend. Some ethnicities have a greater discrepancy between proficient and non-proficient compared to others. That's math, and then this is the ELA percentages. So you'll see that English language learners are not showing proficiency on this test, but they are in the English language program. So showing proficiency on a language assessment is hard. So are there any questions on ACT before we move to the CCRI data?
First, thank you for checking in with us. I think at this time, I think we're fine with moving forward if everyone's all right, and I'm sure we'll circle back. But thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so if you remember in the A-through-F accountability model, ACT is at least 50% of that model, but 20% is attributed to CCRI points. So we wanted to share the last 3 years of this data with you as well. So CCRI points are allocated for career and then college readiness. So career are the red points and college are the blue points. There's many different indicators that fall into CCRI, but I've listed some of the most dominant ones or some of the ones that we get most points for. I did want to point out that if you look at the blue table, you'll see that ACT is listed in the blue as well. So even though ACT already gets 50% of the A through F letter grade, a student also could get all their blue points through ACT. So that test is heavily weighted in that accountability model. This slide just shows you the distribution of our total CCRI points across the 3 years. So you'll see that we don't have huge changes and declines, but there's some of the schools have a slight decline in their total CCRI points. This data just shows the distribution of blue points. So really what we're looking for here is we want the average to be above 1. Because if the average for a student is above 1, that means that almost every student gets at least 1 blue point. So the further away you are from 1 or the higher average, the better. That means that more of your students are getting that point. So you'll see that we have a distribution across schools, but every school is reaching above that 1 mark. This slide shows you the distribution of red points or the college or the career points. So you'll see that, again, we want to be above 1. Some of the schools are hovering really close to that 1. We want to be as further away from 1 as we can, but at least above 1. And you'll see that all of our schools are at that point, at least at 1 or above. This slide is really hard to read from this far. But this slide shows you the distribution or the percentage of students that are achieving different levels of points. So 0 points means that the student didn't achieve a blue or a red point. 10 points means that they've achieved 1, either a red or blue point. 20 means that they have achieved more than 1, either in red or blue. And the 22, which is the highest points, indicates that a student has at least one red and one blue. So really the way the CCRI index is set up is it rewards students that have a balance between college and career. So we really want to increase the number of students that are obtaining those points from both areas, career and college. So you'll see if you compare across years, a number of our schools have increased the percentage of seniors that are getting those 22 points. What we really try to focus on is ensuring that we have almost no students that are receiving 0 points. So then 20% also of the formula is tied to graduation rate. So we wanted to share the graduation and dropout rate for our schools. So graduation rate lags a year. We don't get the cohort 22 graduation, 4-year graduation rate until the 5-year graduation rate is complete. So at the end of this school year, the 4-year cohort 2022 graduation rate will be complete. So this current A through F letter grade is based on the 4-year graduation rate of cohort 2021. So you'll see the state graduation rate and then the graduation rate across all of our schools. Every school exceeds the state graduation rate, so that's a positive. Any school that is above 90% graduation rate receives full points. If a school is below 90, then they have to show a 2 points increase. So you'll see that we have a decrease across our graduation rate, so there's a number of schools that won't get that 4-year graduation rate point. This is the dropout rate for both the state and the district. So you'll see that our dropout rate is lower than that of the state, but we do kind of follow the same trends as you look at how the state dropout rate changes, so does our district dropout rate. Mrs. Hilgers talked about the fact that there's an increased mobility in a number of students that are not re-enrolling in school, and so that's a statewide problem that you could kind of see evident in that dropout rate. Then this slide shows the dropout rate across all of our schools. So you'll see that some schools are affected by that dropout rate at a much greater rate than others. I think the final data point that we wanted to share, because of the high impact of ACT on our letter grade, we have produced an ACT plan that we've utilized last year, and now in this current year, we've made some adjustments based on what we've learned from last year. But you'll see that we have 3 state level tests. Those are the same as they are last year. And so we designed a plan for each of the quarters. So you'll see that in quarter 1 and quarter 3, we put the Horizon practice test. So we would like students to take the Horizon practice test at the end of September to get baseline data and to see how they're doing. They would take this assessment in class. They won't be timed during this first time. And then we've developed a lot of materials for teachers to use to react to that data, to provide practice, and to ensure that the next time when they do a practice test, which will simulate the ACT testing in quarter 3, that we're hopeful we see progress, and then in quarter 4 they would be ready for the state level test. So to achieve that, we have an action plan that is at a district level. So we have roles for the executive team, for teaching and learning, for our content specialist, but then also content specialists have worked with department leads to create content specific action plans. So English has a plan of how they're going to tackle the ACT and how they're going to infuse different standards from the ACT in the scope and sequence, math, social studies, and science as well. And then we have a plan for the non-core areas. We have a tool called Newsella that provides students with practice of reading text and then responding to text-embedded questions. And so we've created libraries by different non-core areas to ensure that teachers, like a CT teacher, can go in and tie a reading to the curriculum, but then also spend some time talking about how do you find the correct answer. So I think you have access to this plan as well.
So I think our plan is only as good as the implementation efforts. It is. We need to take a look and see if we need to revise our plan, or if it's that we just need to make sure that we're implementing the plan with fidelity at our sites. So what we've done is we've developed a data calendar. It's housed in our instructional leadership folder. All of our site administrators have that, and the executive team. And in that, there's different data points that we're going to be monitoring and looking at and having discussions. And so teaching and learning will model that with the directors and who they oversee in the programs. And then we'll be having those discussions with our site admin as well. The other thing that we're going to be doing is every quarter, we would like to be able to have this learning exchange with you, the governing board, so that we can share with you how our kids are progressing, that we can share with you other elements, as I said earlier, about our credit deficient kids, how large that is, and our plan of what we're going to do to attack that, to provide support. And just want that exchange to be with you so that we keep excellence in teaching and learning at the forefront of all of our decision making, what we discuss, what we do, how we lead. So with that, are there any questions that you might have about any of the information that Dr. Alexic and I shared with you tonight?
First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to put all this together and analyzing it and presenting it for us. Obviously, it's very important, but also difficult information to digest, considering what we've all been through and kind of what our expectations are and what we hope to see moving forward. But I will hold my questions as I'm still kind of formulating them. But board members, Vice President Montero.
First of all, thank you again for the presentation. There's a lot of stuff to go into that I know after this, so I definitely want to delve more into some of the data. Two quick questions that I had come pop up. The first one when you mentioned the utilizing the 60-minute class periods to have that real-time intervention with the MTSS teams. I'm just kind of curious, what does that look like, especially when it comes to the visibility of the key members of our MTSS teams to our students? I was just kind of curious what more specifics on what those real-time interventions look like.
I'll share with you what we're doing. So Maggie Fountain, our professional development coordinator, has created professional development for our teachers. Some of our teachers know how to do interventions in real time. I'm going to share music instructors. They teach, they listen, they take a look and see how kids are performing, and they provide feedback right away. It's no different in any other academic area. You've got learning targets. You might have 2 or 3 learning targets in a lesson. For teachers, they need to have kids do something so it's overt, so they can see if they've achieved it. And they do some type of intervention in between major learning targets. And so Maggie Fountain is not only doing the PD, but also modeling what that might look like for a teacher if they don't know how to do that. It's not just all at the end of the hour. It could be. It could be that you might try and intervene in between learning targets and you've got a group of students that still don't understand. It might be at the end of the hour when some kids are doing independent work that you're pulling kids up to your desk and doing small group instruction, and you're targeting and providing that differentiated instruction that those students need. What you want to do is you want to catch it in real time so it doesn't go over a week or 2 weeks and then it snowballs and kids don't understand a large portion of what they're learning. So that's what you try and do.
Perfect, thank you. The second question I had, I know we're talking about looking at the specific subgroups, and I think they were looking at that data there, I think we can see there is a stark disparity. And I know when we're talking about looking at the 5 goals that we have outlined, and how we're talking about how all these goals apply to all those subgroups, I think it's also important how we look at while we might have an overall increase in the graduation rate for one school, what does that look like for our specific subgroups? Is having a higher goal for certain subgroups, and how are we having those specific, targeted interventions for those specific subgroups. Like, what does that look like in terms of, having these goals outlined, but in terms of having the individualized, targeted, interventions for those subgroups? What does that look like?
That's a great discussion point. So when we go out to the sites, you're going to see that some of our sites, when you do 100% proficiency by 2025, some of our sites have a greater increase that they have to make in order to do that. So when we go out and have those site discussions, I've asked the principals to take a look at this information, to analyze it. I'm going to listen to see if they can analyze the information and understand what they need to do. That's the teacher part of me, is you seek to understand, do they know the areas that they need to focus on? And then if we're looking at everything through a subgroup lens, what is it that they're going to do to target different subgroups on their campus? Because they all have different needs. Some of their subgroups are fine, some aren't, were affected worse. And so I want to see, do they know and have they had those discussions about what they should be doing on their campus to be able to target those? It can be sometimes that in certain courses that you target certain things in different courses. I'm just waiting to hear in the next couple of weeks what our principals, what they've had in mind, and those discussions that they've had with their teams.
So if I may add, we have scheduled MTSS teams this morning, tomorrow, Friday, and they'll be ongoing through the year.
Every month.
So as an example, this morning I was at Marcos along with you and their entire team with the MTSS team. Back to your initial observation, Vice President Montero, and that what does that 60-minute period look like when you weave in an intervention? And it goes down to a checking for understanding. So you're always checking, because you don't continue to go and teach obliviously, because at the secondary level, they're used to delivering information, okay? And I don't mean to say this is in a bad way, but it's we have to incrementally deliver bodies of information and check to see our students getting it before proceeding on to the next target and moving on. And we had this discussion this morning, and I said part of the expectation that I have, and I know that we've been talking with the walkthrough observation forms that are going to be now on their iPads for the evaluators or observers, not always an evaluation, but just an observation, is if you've been in several focused teachers' classrooms that you know need a little more attention, okay? You go in there 3 or 4 times, and what do you observe that needs to be discussed with the teacher? And what do you do with that information? We are now, today, information rich in this district. So what are we doing with that? How are our student leadership, or not student, the teacher leadership through their PLCs and site administrations taking that information to that individualized conversation next step to the teacher? The single most important individual that's going to make the biggest impact and difference on a kid's learning is the teacher. So how are we providing that input and that information to them so that they can change their practices so that we can realize differences and better outcomes on a regular basis, just with a simple checking with understanding. That is probably the biggest hurdle that we have for secondary teachers, I would think. In my 11 years coming from an elementary and special ed background, that is the biggest hurdle that I think we face.
I think this, as a teacher, you think about what are the prerequisite skills that kids need to be able to understand a concept. And so you think about that and you plan for that. And you go, you know what, if I have students that don't have this skill, how am I going to differentiate when I bring them back to my desk and that we sit there and we do that? Because you've got to work toward the standards that the state is saying that you teach to, but also you have to remediate and differentiate for some of those prerequisite skills that kids might not have. So you do both at one time. You've got to have great first instruction. Nothing compares to it. You have to plan, be prepared, and to think through how you're going to teach kids. And really, we've devoted a lot of time to professional learning communities. Our communities should be looking at student data every single week that guides how they're planning for that next week of instruction.
Thank you. Member Barraza, Member James, Hodge, sorry. I wasn't watching exactly who put their button up. Member Hodge.
Okay, so I'm still digesting. I have a lot to digest. Mine is more of a comment more than a question. My comment is, I look at the statistics, I'm looking at the data, I'm looking at the schools, I'm looking at the breakdowns of the subtitles. And I'm gonna take the monkey elephant in the room. Our minority kids are suffering hard. So what are we doing to go outside of that box to find other ways that maybe be working for other areas in other states? We got to go beyond just Arizona and find out what we can do, because our minority kids are suffering. Let me say that again. And I'm emotional because how bad it looks to me right now. So I just want to know, what can we do to look outside that box, because apparently whatever we're doing is just not working for those subtitled kids, and it's breaking my heart.
Agree with you. One of the things that I've just done recently is I went through for every single school district in the state of Arizona what the things that they were utilizing for their ESSER funds. And I thought I need to look and see, are people doing any other creative things that we haven't thought about? Then I thought, you know what, look at higher performing states, go through the same thing and look and see if they have different designs, and to learn from other states. And so to your point, Member Hodge, we have got to do a better job with some of our subgroups. They've been hit hard, like I said in the beginning, my introduction. And know this, sometimes this keeps me up at night. And so really, our school year, we have to focus on the learning of our kids. We just have to do that.
Thank you. Member Barraza.
I appreciate the presentation and how much work it went into gathering the data and analyzing the data to get to where we have a framework, model, and goals outlined. It's not easy first, you know, you're really having to look at raw information and try to look at correlations. And that takes time. And I appreciate your team and everyone involved being able to gather and analyze this information. It's very useful, and I appreciate the honest data. You know, I think that's how we get towards achievement, is by looking at where we are and being able to assess honestly what variables are impacting at the time. Looking at the dates, obviously it looks like that the pandemic played a very big role into academic achievement, and MTSS model is great for being able to capture those students, and you know, in real time. I think that's also very important. 1 week goes by, it compounds itself, and then it becomes exponential when you're talking about an entire day's worth of coursework, you know, that you're missing out on from 1 day or 2 days or so forth. And so I appreciate that information. I also think, you know, like with conversations I've had with very difficult conversations just with families I've been meeting with, and in fact I had a conversation with Berdetta today about what she went to tour. She went to tour human services and talk to people in the community, and there's a lot on people's plate right now in terms of I guess compiled into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, trying to make sure we sustain, you know, our own individual existence and create a stable environment before we can get to where we can get to academic achievement. I think a big part of that, from her discussion as well as with mine and some students, there's a tremendous impact in terms of nutritional deficiency. And I think there's a correlation with this, you know, with the data and being able to provide, you know, additional meals and resources for students. Can you look as your team, maybe with Julie's team, to see, like, maybe get some data from them and see if there's an impact on students that are participating in, you know, morning breakfast meal programs, or any other ways that we can look at that as we move forward with academic achievement, being able to look at the nutritional aspect of that as well. because that would mean a lot to me, and I think there is a correlation.
And I do too. I think when you look at your lower socioeconomic status and those students who have, do our food program, I think there's a direct correlation about how well they perform in that, so we'll do.
Thank you so much.
The
I
other
really
thing
appreciate it.
too, is I know that this is difficult and it's a lot to take in terms of data. We are very happy to sit down with you if you'd like that and to go through and do that. As a principal, I used to sift through the data and then I'd call Dr. Alexic and I'd say, okay, check my understanding, make sure I'm on target. This is what I'm seeing. Just let me know, so that you set goals at your site and make sure that you are trying to meet those goals. But it's a lot to sift through, and so thank you for taking the time to do that.
I appreciate it, and I just wanted to say also, thank you for making sure that, the board, you're always working towards giving us really good information on teaching and learning, and I appreciate the aspect of quarterly updates.
Good.
So thank you for mentioning that.
Thank you. Member James?
Great, thank you for all this information. I have a couple of questions, but do we have strategies around working with our, I know we have some open enrolled students, but strategies of working with our sister districts when it comes to that academic piece and interventions, so there are similar interventions, alignment of curriculum and all of that. I just actually came from another meeting because our district in Tempe Elementary, we just redid our strategic plan, and the presentation was incredible. And so as I know we're going into our strategic plan, kind of looking to see how all of our plans align, what our goals are, I think would be really fabulous. And I know we do some of that, but it would be wonderful to see like a presentation like this of how we are all working together as a tri-district.
That's a great idea, and in fact, as we start our new strategic planning, to be able to have their 2 elementary districts in different goals, especially in goal number 1 that has to do with student achievement, that's a great idea. The other thing that, as I was looking through data, and when Dr. Mendeville and I were at the Helios Foundation, the kids that had the greatest impact are current 8th graders right now. So in my mind, one of the things in our tri-district articulation meetings is to have the 3 districts come together and do a focus of, especially in math, for our current 8th graders, so that they don't come in low, but we're doing things now. We're proactive rather than reactive with this group of students. So they were hit hardest in the state.
Right. And I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but is summer school going to be free of charge next year as well?
It is.
And so maybe getting those 8th graders into math remediation and really having advocating for that, whatever it takes, so that they are a little more caught up would be wonderful. And then kind of piggybacking on what Member Hodge was saying with the subgroups and what can we do, I think if we could have some strategic conversations around those supports, and as we're looking toward our budget, and we're always developing that, throughout the year, really seeing where are the gaps per subgroup in learning and budget. So how can we take some of our budget and assign it to those subgroups, and what are the things that we need to supply to them, and effectively, use that money, that budget, so that we can bring those subgroups up. So if we can kind of look at that correlation, I think, throughout the year as we're doing our budget, I think that would be a good goal.
May I add just some additional information? I just had a meeting on Monday to review the Access ASU, and it's kind of a combination of Gear Up and very college going and career going support that Access ASU, and they've been fortunate in receiving a much larger grant, and so their work with Tempe High has been notable, and they are using that as a model with the other schools that they work with, but they are looking to expand to all of our title schools. And so the work that they do is really some of the work that we're talking about, those bridge programs. We started our bridge program, returned back to it when I became superintendent. I think we had maybe 20 to 35 kids that first year, and then it's ballooned to over 100, and then we had the big C, and then we're having to return back to those bridging opportunities in both math and in ELA. So we work collaboratively with both districts, but Dr. Driscoll is most certainly on board with ensuring that there's a greater readiness, specific focus readiness level with math and ELA for 7th and 8th grade so that they are better prepared when they come to us in 9th grade. And this is even before the interruption in students learning as a result of COVID. So there's that, those conversations are happening right now. The key piece for me, because we provide those, is that and we get good teachers, we have to sustain that momentum of individualized attention when they're in 9th grade. Because the level of attention and detail that they're getting from us, or at least starting, is very different from what they may get at middle school. So we're trying to bridge and resemble the instructional practices that work with our 7th and 8th and graders so that they come and there's a cohesive sense of instructional expectation and that kids just come, okay, this makes sense. Instead of so brand new to them, it's almost a shock with our 9th graders. So any opportunity that we can get to act like a more unified system when it comes to instruction, then we need to do that. And I think we're poised to, with the leadership with both districts, to make that happen more so than ever.
Thank you, Dr. Menville. I share all the sentiments and thoughts and comments that fellow board members have shared so far. It's tough to digest, particularly because obviously we understand that the pandemic was incredibly tough to navigate through and kind of maintain and support each other, especially as we're trying to figure out unknowns. One silver lining, and I tried my best to reframe things to be positive and kind of in a proactive framework. But one silver lining that I am grateful for is that this has shown a light of what has been consistent before the pandemic. This is nothing new with what our subgroups and our students are going through. I appreciate Member Hodge saying it out loud that our minority students are suffering, but that's not new information, especially to those of us who have grown up in the district. I'm grateful that we are navigating and trying to find through new interventions and new ways that can help address these. And credit to our principals who are at the helm of each of our schools, because that is a tough job and a tough feat to overcome, and try to do your best to help all of our students and our staff get there. Because we have been in survival mode for a bit here. But to Member James's point earlier, I think it is important to look at how we're allocating our resources. And one example that I will always go back to is, as one point, our facilities up to par with what we're expecting to perform, right? And I'm grateful that we have looked towards our science wings, for example, like at McClintock. Thank you, Principal Arroyo, for that advocacy. And the reason is, right, how can we expect our students to exceed and perform if we're not providing the necessary tools and support and interventions and equitable resources to get there? It's similar to what Member Hodge had mentioned, addressing the elephant in the room. Desert Vista and Corona are the most performing schools in our district. And the subgroup populations reflect it too, and where our schools are. And it's heartbreaking because all of our students deserve to succeed, and not just succeed, but thrive. And I was talking to Dr. Mendeville way earlier when I was kind of considering whether I wanted to run again or not, just because I am so drained from just pandemic governance alone. But one of the main things that got me so fired up was academic achievement, because that was what got me through. And even then, it was because so many people stepped up and provided those interventions in my own life, right? So when we're looking at our budgetary capacity, are we truly allocating funds in a manner that's consistent and conducive to those needs? And Vice President Montero and Member James and I are part of a fellowship where they provided a breakdown of specific funding and correlated to academic achievement. Because the purpose and the lesson that they wanted to leave with us was that just because throwing money does not mean that it's going to make it better, right? Like, we know that, and we need to be strategic and thoughtful about what those interventions look like. Which at that point was a very stark difference, because it showed specifically to our own district of what is actually happening and where each of our schools fall. So, I mean, I think that's kind of just to build off of a thought with respect to our budget. And just re-emphasizing Member Hodges' point with what we need to be doing, because I'm just, and I know that this is not just for us, it's a state and national trend, but I'm quite frankly sick and tired of all of our students not getting to where they need to be and prepared. But I do want to touch base on the chronic attendance piece.
President Garcia.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Can I say something to
Yes,
you?
yes,
We did this together.
yes.
When we were at McClintock, we did this. It was a low B school, and in 1 year, we went up to an A. And it was because we had a laser-like focus on student achievement. Not every teacher liked it, not every student liked it, but we did it. And we enlisted the support of students. We've got to get back. We've got to reset. We've got to get back to what we did, or we're going to continue down this road for years. And that impacts our community. It impacts our community. And so here's this. Life gets busy. Things happen at a site. You know, there are different things that people think are important to talk about. To me, what's important to talk about is the learning that goes on. And sometimes when different things come up from different groups of people, maybe we put those aside and we say, we're going to focus on the learning of Tempe Union students. When our principals are out there and things are happening on their campus and they're trying to get into classrooms to do walkthroughs, they've got to keep that focus of, even though things are going on at their site, they've got to continue down this path. You know, Steve Threadgill said to me, should we cancel the MTSS meeting today? Nope, we're going to keep our focus. This is what we do, is we focus on teaching and learning. And guys, it's just me. You know, it's someone that's been in this district for a long time, but my passion's coming out right now. We all have to hold each other accountable for the learning of our kids. We all do. And so let's do it together. And you know what? We might research, we might try some things. They might not work, they might work, but let's do it together and learn together and figure out what's good for kids.
No, absolutely, and I appreciate your passion, because that's why we're all here, right? And, you know, I think as we all move together forward, I think it's also important to understand, and particularly to like McClintock, for example, as someone who went there 10 years ago, it's not the same school as it was 10 years ago too, right? And so I think it's important to adjust and acknowledge those elephants in the room, as Member Hodge said, because I think if we don't, then that kind of ends up being to not only our detriment, but to detriment to all of our students. So, but I'm really grateful that everyone is recalibrating and trying to understand how we get back to where we all need to be. But I know Member Hodge has a question, but I do have a question about the chronic absences issues. Have we, or what, I guess I'm struggling with this because 2 points. One, how are we identifying kind of why we're getting to that point in the first place? And then two, do those absences, have those risen up to the level of truancy issues? Because I want to be mindful of, obviously, the classroom time, but also the legal implications of it for our students.
They do, and Principal White spent time with our MTSS teams and then also looking at an appeal process, because at a certain point, students lose credit for a course. And then we found that sometimes families get sick, Sometimes things are happening within the family, and kids are absent for a myriad of reasons. And so there was an appeal process as well. But our MTSS teams should be looking at those kids with attendance issues. I mean, we're in, the 10th day? You probably have kids who already have 2 or 3 days absent already. And so there's issues going on where we need to really communicate with parents, get those kids in school, because they can't learn if they're not in school.
Absolutely. And then with the truancy, do you know by chance if any of those chronic absences are leading to those issues?
I'm going to ask this. Principal White, can I ask you, when you worked with your MTSS teams with the chronic absenteeism, are you able to answer President Garcia's question?
Oh, if any of the chronic absences are rising to the level of truancy issues.
Some of them are, but
Those students should be on the morning lists that we talked
They
about
should all
this
be.
morning.
absolutely.
So,
And what we've done is we've looked at, if you're in this week, if you have this many absences, we're worried about you. You've got too many absences. And so as more weeks go on, we raise that number of absences.
Sites are working with the city of Tempe in regards to the CUTS program, city of Tempe and Phoenix. And so what they're really trying to work with our families on right now is not necessarily just being punitive and saying, you got to go to court and this is what's going to happen, but to help these families come up with plans and supports and processes for their home lives to be able to get them back on track without going straight down the punitive route, kind of like what they've used to do with truancy and tickets and sending them straight to court. So they're being a little bit more, I don't want to say lenient, but they're working with our families in a different way now than what they have done in the past. And so they've come out and done training, at least this year, with a lot of our site dropout prevention coordinators to help them understand when our kids are at the truancy mark. Let's find out what is going on and try to come up with plans of actions for them instead of going straight the other route. So that's moving in a positive route to help our families as well, because some of it is family-wise, some of it is will versus a skill, but when it's a little bit of both, you have to take those two things into account separately.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I really appreciate that breakdown and explanation, and just knowing that we're taking a more collaborative effort with our families, and especially with their city partners too. Member Hodge, I think is going to be overall more conducive to their future. So thank you for sharing that.
May I share just a little, well, not a little, I think for me it's a glimmer of hope, because here's that for me. Prior to, the COVID, we started on a very strong trajectory and focus with learning for all our students. And the measure we were using at the time, because the state was still fiddling around whether it's going to be the ACT or the AZ Merit or, whatever, it's been a while they were looking at that. So our teachers, along with teaching and learning, we have now our quarterly benchmark assessments in ELA and math, science, and I think we're completing all the content areas at some point. But we were showing marked improvement across all subgroups on our benchmark that is aligned with the state standards. That's the whole purpose of having those. So those are our district checkpoints that we conduct quarterly. We were showing very, very nice gains. And then we had kids out of school, so there has been an interruption in our flow and our work as teachers, as educators, as planners. And so my glimmer of hope is that I know that our teachers and our staff and our systems work when we put our minds to it and we focus. And that's part of the recalibration. I love your word, better than a reset, but the recalibration that is happening right now. And but we just have to keep that focus centered on our students. And I'll be real blunt and frank, we are a minority district. now and have been for a number of years. So we need to pay attention to that with all our students at all our schools. So I'm hopeful that I know our teachers are going to rise to the occasion now that we're somewhat normalized, whatever that is. But together we can see the achievement of our students improve, and that's the work that I love, and I know that my team loves, and all of you care about. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mendebo. Member Hodge, I know you got a question. Just
Sorry, Member Hodge.
No, you're fine. You know what? President Garcia, you just kind of hit the nail on with the hammer when I was asking. I was going to go into the attendance because I was just wondering the breakdown of the data on the attendance at each school versus the subtitles and how many times they're absent versus what classes they're absent in, and all that comes together to see how we can help in that. And I also just wanted to apologize that I didn't say great presentation. I guess I got so wrapped up in it, but you guys did a phenomenal job, great presentation. Principals, I know this is hard. I am not here blaming. I don't want you to feel like that it's like when I say, oh my God, let's do it. But this is something that's not just Tempe Union, it's regional, like we said, it's all over. So if we don't discuss it and talk about it, nothing ever gets done. So we have to bring it in the room and talk about it. So thank you guys for all you do. I hope you guys had a wonderful beginning of your school year. Thank you.
yes. All right, with that, couldn't have closed it out better. Dr. Mendebo, do you have anything else you'd like to? All right, well, thank you both so much, and thank you everyone else for being here. We will recess and reconvene at 7 o'clock for the regular meeting. Thank you. the audience. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by, almost gave you a doctor title, Vice President Montero, followed by a moment of silence in remembrance of our marker students from the Guadalupe community, and then followed by the land acknowledgement by Mr. Carranza. If you can please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
Thank you.
Yeah. Tempe Union High School District acknowledges that our community of schools is located on the ancestral lands of the Okmul, Pima, and Peeposh Maricopa indigenous peoples who have inhabited these lands since time immemorial. With this land acknowledgement, the district formally recognizes that the traditional care and keeping of these lands by the indigenous peoples allow us to be here today.
Thank you so much, Vice President Montero, and thank you so much, Mr. Carranza. All right, we'll begin with the report from Superintendent, Dr. Mendenhall.
Thank you, President Garcia, Vice President Montero, members of the board, executive team, members present at today's meeting, and our viewing and listening audience at home. We appreciate you taking the time with us today. We have some new introductions. We have an opportunity every year when we have new faces and new places in our district, and sometimes we have not so new faces in a different position as well, and so that's happening this evening. So we'd like to take time during during this time with my superintendent's report to acknowledge folks who have come new to us and joined our Tempe Union family, or others who have been in one position and moved into a different one to support the work that we do here in the district. And I want to first ask Karen Baratia to come forward. Karen was you need to go over there, Karen. You need to go over there. Karen is awesome. Karen took over the role of Employee Benefits Coordinator for the district this year, having served for 6 years as the Executive Assistant in Business Services under the direction of Diane Mulmans, who, as some of you may know, retired in June. Karen has over 20 years of experience in human resources and benefits management in hospital and automotive test environment organizations. We'll be using you in the transportation department. And takes pride in helping her coworkers navigate the complexities of their health insurance coverage. Karen feels privileged when she can share her coworkers' joy, and she is honored to assist them when they are confronted with health challenges. But you did that also when you were served in the business services. You were always extraordinarily helpful. Her goal is to work with existing practices and find ways to enhance current programs for the benefit of all our Tempe Union employees. So I'm thrilled you're in this position, first of all, and because I know of your background, and I have a human resources background as well, so, and a little bit of the benefit side. So I'm just glad you're here taking care of all of us.
Awesome.
Yeah, so do you want to share anything?
Oh, just quickly, June said I had to say something. First of all, good evening. Thank you to the governing board, Dr. Mendeville, the exec team, and all of our visitors here for inviting me tonight. I feel passionate about the employees, whether I was in business services or whether I'm now in benefits. And I just want to support the cause, support our family, support our students, and just be the best that we can be. So going forward, we hope to, with the help of Dr. Keller and her staff, reinvent some of the programs we had before, our wellness program, just some of the other things that are there to benefit our employees. So again, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be in the new position. I'm learning a lot of new things, and I think that I have a great support team, and I'm very thankful for that. So.
We're so thankful to have you on board. Thank you, Karen. Next is, we're going to invite Amy Hickel to the podium. Amy, she's a Corona graduate, has spent her 29-year career at Tempe Union, first as a teacher and then as a school counselor. For the past 24 years, she was Desert Vista's counseling department lead, did a great job in that role. And this year, she moved to the district office as a full-time Tempe Union online coordinator. Our Tempe Union online program is growing and technically is our 7th school. Amy attended Northern Arizona University, where she earned a bachelor's degree in secondary education and a master's degree in school counseling. Amy and her husband, Troy, have 2 sons, Tori and Mason. Both are graduates of Desert Vista. The family enjoys scuba diving trips, and Amy recently took up kayaking. Oh, I didn't know that. I can kayak. Let's go kayaking. With increased numbers of students attending Tempe Union Online, administration recognized the need for a full-time coordinator to ensure their success. We are fortunate to have such a dedicated professional working with our online students and their families, and I can attest that you've already done a remarkable job in improving some of those structural systems so that our students get maximal learning outcomes for when they do take online courses with us. So thank you for joining us, Amy. Do you have anything to say? Anybody want to introduce family? Did you get?
No family to introduce tonight. They're all off doing their thing. But I will say, one, thank you for the opportunity to take on this role. It's a great new challenge that I was ready for. And so it's great to be here. There's a lot of energy behind Tempe Union Online right now. We're servicing about 200 full-time students that are at Tempe Union Online full-time for a variety of reasons, and over 900 concurrent students as of today. So those concurrent students are finding room in their day, in their schedule to take another class, whether that's so they can participate in sports or engineering programs or fine art programs, or we're working for their seal of biliteracy. They're taking another class which gives them flexibility to enhance the programs that they're taking at their sites. And I'm very passionate about that for our students, as well as we have over 300 students that are taking a credit recovery class. You know, their learning has been disrupted, and so they're having the opportunity to make up credit in a way that is, I don't want to say easy, but it provides them the flexibility to do so, which is the biggest thing. And so my opportunity to collaborate with professionals that are embracing the online learning environment. We've hired teachers and that staff. We've become very collaborative in a short amount of time. And so I'm excited to be here and see what we can do moving forward.
Well, we're excited to have you because it's going to grow. It already is. Thank you, Amy. And next, I'd like to invite Diana Miller. Diana Miller is the district's new college and career readiness coordinator. She was a teacher for almost 20 years and has a master's degree in secondary education from NAU, and recently completed a second master's degree in educational administration from Grand Canyon University. When Diana came to the Valley from Prescott, she first taught at Marcos de Niza before moving to Centennial Middle School in the Kyrene School District, where she was the AVID site coordinator. Diana wants every student to have the access and ability to attend college if that is the path they choose. As someone who has worked at many AVID schools, Diana is passionate about ensuring every student is ready to succeed, regardless of the path they choose after high school. We know that Diana's expertise will benefit all of our Tempe Union students. So welcome to the district, Diana, or back to the district, I should say, right?
Yes, I'm very honored and super excited to be here and to take on this role. I know I have really big shoes to fill with Mark's absence and Jenny's absence from last year. And fortunately, I have Mark to walk alongside me this year and make sure that there's not a blip in what we can do for our students, for our college and career readiness. I'm excited to take on what he started and what she started and grow it into encompassing other avenues that we haven't been able to tap into yet. And I'm super excited about those new endeavors and taking on our Maya learning implementation this year as we roll forward with that. So I'm very...
Do you have family here that you want to introduce?
My son came with me, my other son who's...
Hey.
started at Centennial and is very sad that his mother just left. Sorry. My other son, Christopher, is a Mountain Point graduate, class of 2021.
Oh,
So-
awesome, awesome. Very good. Thank you, Diana. And Mr. Josh, can you come forward? Boy, Josh. Josh has hit the ground running as Tempe Union's coordinator for fine and performing arts. And this is a position that we have almost literally fought for, haven't we? But this is the timing's, it's always about timing, and we have such fantastic programs, and you're going to lead the helm in improving all of them. But Josh comes to the district office after serving as a director of bands at his alma mater, Desert Vista. Since 2003, he has 2 Masters of Arts degrees, one in administration supervision from University of Phoenix, and the other is instrumental music conducting from Sam Houston State University. That's why you're so good. Nationally, Josh's Desert Vista bands have performed at the Music for All Festival in Indianapolis, the Chicago Symphony Hall, and 4 times as invited performer at Carnegie Hall. At the 2015 Super Bowl, he and his marching band were featured at the NBC pregame broadcast and the Game Day Fan Plaza and NFL Experience. His marching band was also the featured performing group at welcome events for the 2016 College Football National Championship, which took place in Arizona. Josh, I'm not done yet, and his marching bands are 9-time Arizona State marching champions. He has been honored as a Desert Vista Outstanding Teacher, received the Ahwatukee Foothills News Best High School Teacher Award, been recognized as one of Ahwatukee's top 5 people, and named a finalist for the Governor's Arts Award and the Excellence in Education Award by the Tempe Diablos. We also had a fun time in D.C. when Desert Vista was chosen to represent the state of Arizona for the 100-year centennial for the Lincoln Memorial. Josh is a strong addition to our leadership team. I'm so thankful you're here. We know he will use his knowledge and experience to positively impact our fine and performing arts program. Let's give it a hand to Josh. And I know your family is here, so please introduce and share some words.
Absolutely. I have my mother here tonight. That's Sherry down on the end, videotaping.
She's filming it.
Yes, and she's been in this room a couple times before, but I was in student mode with Tempe Union High School District at the time. But my wife, Jennifer, who actually in December we're celebrating 20 years. We got married when we were 15, so no. Just kidding. And then Madeline, who's in 8th grade, she'll be in the Tempe Union District next year, so that'll be kind of a fun chapter for us. Amelia in 4th grade, and Oliver in 3rd grade, and that's our clan. And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to the executive team, to this governing board, the trust that you've given to me specifically for the inception of this position. It means a lot, and I take that responsibility very seriously. And as I've told my principals over all the years, I work so hard that I hope I've made them proud. I always say that every year. I hope I make you proud this year in this program. And I say that to you all now, representing all the fine arts of this district. I hope we make you proud, and we'll continue to work hard to do so. Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Mandeville. All right, we'll go straight into our next item on the agenda, which is public comment. This is the time for the public to comment. Members of the governing board may not discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Public comment is accepted in person only. Normally, public comment concerning a specific agenda item will be heard at the time that the item is addressed by the governing board. Each member of the public will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak in accordance with policy BEDH. Public participation at governing board meetings, the following limits will apply. 1 to 15 speakers, 3 minutes, 16 to 30, 2 minutes, and 30 over 31, or 31 and above, 1 minute. Individuals may use the presentation form, and I believe most folks have submitted those, and any documentation or literature, enough for each board member that the public wishes to give the governing board, must accompany the presentation form. at this time, we will continue with public comment that are not on the agenda. So Dr. Mendeville?
Thank you, President Garcia. But for those of you who are not here for this part or any other part, and you were here to celebrate our recognitions of new staff, you're free to leave. However, we'd love for you to stay too. So, but I'm going to call up Kristen, and I don't want to mispronounce. Is it Quentin? Kavitan? Okay. To the podium. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen Kavitan. Our family has 2 senior girls at Desert Vista High School. The dress code enforcement has been a recent topic of discussion at our home and in our community. I would like to thank Dr. Mendeville and the school board members for listening to my concerns, some of which I have already written in a letter sent last week. I'm just going to go over a few points, but not all of them. In our experience, the dress code treats girls differently based on body type and size, which one of my daughters has personally experienced. When she wore the exact same shirt on the same day in the same class as a shorter, less curvy girl, and she was singled out and told to cover up. Even today, my teen daughter's shorts have an inseam of 6 inches, yet they break the dress code since her fingertips do not extend past her shorts. My shorts have an inseam of 5.5 inches, and since I am short, are within the dress code. My other teen is working and unfortunately could not be here. The dress code is an important issue to her as well. She was told in a prior year by a counselor in a shirt that appropriately covered her chest, but still broke the dress code, that she was disrespecting herself and her body. She should zip up the hoodie she was wearing. She did so quietly, but would like you to know she is full of respect for herself, despite your attempt to shame her in front of her peers. My teen who is here today was hesitant to come and did not want to speak. They like their teachers. They do not want to face retaliation for speaking out for others who have been dress coded. They worry that by speaking up, they will be targeted this year and dress coded and unfairly judged by admin, staff, or teachers. My girls are still forming their identities. They are smart, honor students who enjoy math and science, athletic, adventurous, funny, honest, easygoing, independent, practical teens. They are still figuring out who they are, but they know what they are not. They are not a distraction. They are not less than. I am here today to stand up for them and anyone who does not know that they are more than the clothes they wear, and they deserve to hear that. I hope you reconsider your wording, enforcement, as well as your reasoning behind the current dress code. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Jennifer Underwood.
Dr. Mendeville, members of the governing board. I'm Jennifer Underwood, a DV parent a couple times over. The enforcement of DV's dress code has become an educational barrier and distraction this year, rather than a structure needing to be reset. As a district, we have a great mission, vision, strategic goals, core values, D&I initiatives, and social emotional wellness initiatives, and our dress code should align. I'm from a family of educators, and actually, if you talk to my daughter, I'm the strictest mom. I work hard to ensure the students in our district reach their highest potential, but I believe in rules centered around evidence-based data, creating positive outcomes that reinforce the inherent worth of each child. Therefore, I look for research to support the claim that dress codes have proven to increase student achievement by allowing students to focus more on their studies. I wasn't actually able to find any data that showed an increase in student achievement based on dress code. It was surrounded with uniforms, and then also in elementary students, which, as you know, cannot be correlated to high school students due to the difference in developmental levels. I'm a Catholic school kid, and I can assure you that hormones are present in students, even if they're covered in plaid and hideous corduroy. My concerns are that this policy as written is outdated and exclusionary in its discipline practices, not commensurate with the other sites, could pose a hardship, economic hardship to families, is unable to be enforced consistently. As you heard, it is disproportionately affecting our female students, who already today have fewer rights than their grandmothers. In the absence of supporting data indicating benefits in academic achievement or social emotional wellness, how can we justify allocating teacher time to enforcement of this? The impact on teacher-student relationships and students possibly missing educational opportunities by being sent to the office don't seem worth it. The 22-23 student handbook recommends identical discipline for students violating dress code as it does for having combustible materials, contraband, gambling, inappropriate language, and negative group affiliation. Our students shouldn't really be subjected to the same first offense, conference, or short-term suspension, second or third offense, short-term to long-term suspension. It also negatively impacts social emotional wellness. We're a cluster point in the East Valley for teen suicides. Words and actions matter. The timing, approach, and language we use to engage teens is important. Experts agree that you should dress code them privately if you do. We shouldn't really reinforce that how you look is the most important thing about a student. They get enough of that messaging through other outlets. Can we stop perpetuating rape culture by implying that girls are responsible for how boys think and act? We do need to be respectful, gender neutral, and body positive, regardless of how our students present themselves. This is not a new dress code, but it is being newly enforced, and now that's become a policy problem. My daughter is a dedicated student. She has rigorous courses, including 3 honors classes and 16 credits of dual enrollment. I want her to raise her hand and participate, which won't happen if she's worried about admonishment over a crop top.
Thank you, Jennifer. That concludes public comment on that item.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rendeville. Next, we have consent agenda item. Consent agenda. I move approval of items G1 through G12. May I have a second, please?
I second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have teaching and learning, item 1, Summer Education Academy update. Dr. Rendeville?
Thank you, President Garcia, Vice President Montero, members of the board, executive team, our viewing and sitting audience right now. I'm going to invite Adam to come to the podium. He is the summer education coordinator. Adam Johnson is in a new role, actually, this year. He is now over at a rival school, Tempe High, but had been as the assistant principal for activities at McClintock, and now he is the assistant principal for academics at Tempe High with Brian Gulliford. And so Adam was the coordinator for our Summer Education Academy, and he's going to present some outcomes, some very good ones, actually.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you to the Governing Board President Garcia, Governing Board Vice President Mr. Montero, and the rest of the board members and the executive team. This is actually really exciting for me to be here today with the team, the leadership team that we had at Summer Education Academy and Miss White. Did she go? Well, she was part of it, big part of it. So, where's what? I can figure out Summer Education Academy, but not this button here. So, all right. So, I want to take some time, just really, Summer Education Academy and the success that we had this year could not have happened without the list of literally every single person here. I think every member of the governing board this year spent time with me personally working together to make this a success with the team, the leadership team that we had. So if we take a look and recognize all the people here, the executive team, board members, the SEA leadership team, SEA counselors, the SEA teachers and staff, the Summer Education Academy 2.0 teachers, 2.0 support staff, all school counselors at each site, the site principals and assistant principals that help lend, their leadership team to help make this a success. Mrs. Arroyo and the staff at McClintock High School for allowing us to use their venue. Dr. Barella for in the use of the Innovation Center Academy, that facility. The Synergy support staff, TUHSD families, and of course, our students, right? None of this would have been possible without them. I mean, after all, that's why we're here. So, this year, the SEA leadership, Stacy White was the director, I was the coordinator, Jermaine Whitaker was the principal, Dave Klecka was assistant principal, and Peggy Bondurant also assistant principal. Peggy is a teacher here at Tempe Union, so this was a great leadership opportunity for her, and she did a great job doing so. And I got to say, like, one of the things when they asked me, like, what would I do different? I said, I want to bring this back to teachers, and Peggy was one of the teachers that was selected to be in the leadership team through the interview process, so that was excellent. So this year, we had 3 different types or ways in which students could experience success at summer. First was Tempe Union Online. This was primarily for students who were seeking credit advancement, and they had offerings in both the core and elective classes. And this was for grades 9 through, incoming 9th graders, so 8th graders becoming 9th graders, all the way up through 12th grade. At McClintock High School was the credit recovery program, and all these credit recovery classes, and students who may have been deficient in courses, so they could make up a couple of electives and credits that they may have lost in the core areas. This was for current 9th through 12th graders, because our incoming 9th graders, hopefully they weren't deficient coming in. And then finally, we had something new this year was the Innovation Academy Math Academy at the Innovation Center. And this was for our middle school programs. We did have some students from high school where we squeezed them in to get some extra credit so they could graduate, but predominantly this was for our feeder schools as one method in which we help to prepare them to come to high school or get ahead. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So the in-person classes at McClintock High School, we had 880 students participate. The online courses, we had 2,577 students participate, and in-person Math Academy students, we had 102. The total number of students represents 3,559 students. It's quite an accomplishment. If we look at our current numbers right now, that's more than a quarter of our entire Tempe Union High School District student population. So over a matter of 2 months, these students received an education. And what's most phenomenal about this is the success rate at which we had Summer Education Academy. This summer, we graduated 68 more students who were not eligible to graduate in May, and pretty much everybody here and the governing board and the executive team were present for this. It was an amazing thing at Marcos de Niza to see an auditorium full of families supporting our students and to have students represented from every single campus within our district. And you can see the number of students that were graduated as a result of Summer Education Academy, which would not have happened had they not taken these courses. So I want to spend some time just talking a little bit about the program success rate that we had. The first one we want to talk about is our in-person classes for credit recovery. You can see that in figure 1 on the left, we had 94% of students who participated in these classes earned credit recovery, which is phenomenal. The second figure, we showed that 92% of our students earned credit recovery. I really attribute this to the work that Mr. Whitaker and Ms. Bondurant put in, because they made it a point to visit every single classroom every single day of Summer Education Academy. Wow. So the two of them supporting our teachers and our students gave us such a very high success rate. And so that, with their efforts in doing that and visiting the classrooms, they knew, our teachers and our students knew they were supported every step of the way. The online courses also brought great success. So the first session, we had 78% of our students, they earned advancement credit. Now, that's a good number, higher than what we've ever experienced in Tempe Union Online, but we knew we could do better. So the second session, we analyzed a little bit of what happened. We put some more, not necessarily policy, we communicated a little better. In the second session, we had a 90% success rate for students taking online courses, which I think has never been seen within our district. So from this, we had nearly all said and done, with all of our programs, almost a 90% success rate with all of our students in Summer Education Academy. The Math Academy also experienced great success with 96% of our students passing courses in person for math. And the Summer Math Academy, a little different. We opened it up this year for TD3, and to really just get something started where we could invite and have some equity between the North and the South districts and really invite all of our students. Where we really anticipated more students from TD3, I think one of the focuses moving forward is how do we spread the word better to these schools and within TD3 to really make it a higher impact for students who are seeking academic advancement within math courses within both the districts. We also had 36 of our students, like I said earlier, squeeze some of them in just so they could finish some more graduation requirements. The class offerings for the Summer Education Academy were limited to Algebra 1, Honors Geometry, and Algebra 2, and these were predominantly 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who participated. I also want to talk a little bit about Summer Bridge, because as Summer Bridge is part of our summer education program, where we want to bridge gaps in preparation for students coming into 9th grade. So not necessarily like the Math Academy was focused more on students seeking math advancement. The Summer Bridge is there to bridge the gap of some learning that could have been lost in the previous years. So from this, we had 109 more students participate in this math Summer Bridge. Every single one of these students earned credit, which is phenomenal. So we had representation from 4 of our schools, and hope to expand that even more for our schools that participated. There we go. So I just want to open it up. If you have any questions about what we were able to do at Summer Education Academy, got the team here, told them I was going to if you have questions for them specifically, they're also available to answer any questions. And turn time over to you.
Awesome. First of all, thank you so much for your presentation, for being here, and for all of your work. Over the summer, I know you all had a lot going on, but it was really exciting to see all your energy and your passion, and just seeing the fruit of your work, especially kind of coming and wrapping up at the graduation. So thank you all for everything that you did and continue to do. It's been really inspiring and empowering to see too. So I don't have any questions, but I saw Member Hodge go first on the buttons, and then I lost track after 3 and 4. So we'll have Member Hodge go first.
All right. First off, thank you. It was great presentation for your first one. Got out there. Great job. Thank every one of you for what you did. Peggy, I'm so proud. I hope one day we see you as one of our principals in our schools. Mine more is not a question, mine is just a suggestion, and really isn't for you, it's more for Dr. Mendeville and Mrs. Hilgers, to bring up the numbers in Tempe L and maybe even more. Maybe we should offer more math courses that are not just algebra, geometry, and algebra. I think we'll bring more kids in if it was a course that maybe that they fit in and can take. I think that would maybe help out. I know we have the Bridge program, but the Bridge program doesn't work with the middle schools, does it?
Aren't you done? Because I'm going to respond to that.
Yeah.
Because the Bridge program that we began, we reinstated that when I came on board like 5 years ago, and we started out with 30 kids because it hadn't been done in a number of years, and then the second year we had over 100, and then we had the pandemic, and that stifled a lot of the work we can do. So the Bridge program is getting better and more robust each summer because it's a collaborative effort between our teachers and the middle school teachers to coordinate teaching strategies and make sure that the students are having instructional strategies that are going to resemble what they're going to get when they're freshmen in our system. And I believe on that one slide with the Bridge program, there are a lot, that is predominantly our TD3 neighbors, right? Now, what I think you're seeing is in reference to the Math Academy.
Yes.
The Math Academy had, from a historical perspective, had been offered exclusively at Desert Vista. And it was a great program, but it was one that received district funding, and we decided to offer that to all the students in Tempe Union and not have it as such an exclusive event, because I don't think that was ever the intention. It was just something really, really good that Desert Vista offered for the community. Well, you see that we had more participation, and I think that's the piece that we're going to grow even more, to have TD3 student participation in that Math Academy. And I believe we're going to continue to see growth in our bridge attendance from our feeder districts.
Only thing I was asking is maybe we can add pre-algebra in there, so it just be Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and geometry. So I think that also will open it up a little bit more.
I think that could be a possibility if we offer that as one of our normal high school classes.
Yeah, and isn't pre-algebra one of our normal regular classes? So it shouldn't be.
No, it's not. Algebra 1.
Algebra 1 is, okay. Well, all right.
Now, I will say that those are one of the bridging skill sets that we are working on with TD3, so that they have those algebraic opportunities with instruction early on, so that when they get to Algebra 1, they're better prepared.
Okay, well,
But I hear what you're saying.
yeah, I'm just trying to think outside the box. After what we had earlier, it just kind of makes me think, what can we do to bring more students in? So that was just my question. Thank you.
Board Member Hodge, I just want to point out also that these 109 students here that entered the bridge program also received credit for what they earned in math.
And the credits were algebra, or was it another course? What course was it?
It's MAT 500, I think.
It's elective credit.
Elective credit, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Member Hodge. Member Peraza.
Wonderful work this summer for everyone involved, and I love the aspect of the bringing in mentorship and Peggy, wonderful work. I love also the aspect of focusing on math. That's a very foundational piece of curriculum that has research shown repeatedly that school to prison pipeline, achievement, all of those are met with, like an understanding of math and sciences, so I'm curious in terms of, we have 3,559 students. That's wonderful that we have so many students. How did we get those students? Were they self-enrolled? Were they counselor-based through our MTSS model? Or how did that, what was our approach?
Thanks for that question. Well, it started early on in February. We had a registration process that went out to all families, but we also worked closely with the counselors to identify students who needed credit first, so we could encourage them to populate the registration form, so they were at the top of the list.
And at what point do we know whether a student's going to attend or not? I know that enrollment in those programs kind of varies when the parents, enroll, or how do we go about that conversation with our parents?
Well, most of the parents were the ones that signed up, so we had the parents, they were the ones that were initialing the forms and signing and checking off on the agreements for the summer school. So I feel like the majority, like the vast majority of the students that actually signed up had family involvement with their choice to come to Summer Education Academy. Because we could look at the email list that's generated from the form, and I don't want to make up a number, but I know that looking at the form, it was majority families that were signing their students up for credit recovery.
But part of that, and I'm gonna add, is that we have been working with counselors, knowing that we had an interruption in our learning because of COVID, that we needed to be proactive in the credit recovery efforts that a high school only system is held responsible for. So I know that there was priority for McClintock's in person, if I'm not mistaken, that the credit, you said credit recovery, where they were given the highest priority, because I remember taking phone calls, some phone calls from families, and they prioritized that. But I know that there's been some direction and guidance from our counselors and teachers saying this kid needs a half a credit or a credit to graduate or whatnot, to get back on trajectory.
I appreciate that.
When we opened up the form, we had every single person that signed up, we put them into classes. We filled what we had, and then we adjusted the staff that we had to accommodate the rest of the people who wanted to be on the waiting list. So we were able to almost include all the students that were on the waiting list, especially every student who was credit deficient.
I appreciate that emphasis. I was just wondering, only because I know that's always a challenge when trying to figure out how many classrooms, how many staff, the logistics of it all. And with the logistics, I really appreciate the district making sure that those are taken care of, so that way we have a broad district that it can be very difficult for students to be able to get to one area or the other. So I appreciate the emphasis on that during the summer academy. And also that, we're looking at not only, achievement, but bridging, the academic gaps. And the only other question I have is, what are we looking at in terms of next year? Is it going to be, I know we have a lot of ways that we're catching students academically this year and then next. Is it going to be different in terms of the curriculum for our summer academy, or what adjustments do you see?
I've had a few meetings with Mr. Threadgill and Ms. White, already starting to plan for next summer. Talk about some of the successes that we had and some things that we need to change. Really, right now, the focus is going to be on how we can communicate earlier and better with students and families to understand. And a lot of that also depends on the funding sources for where the Summer Education Academy is going to be, where the funding is for the 3 different parts. And I don't know that yet. So,
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Barraza. Member James.
Thank you for all your work. My son made it through health, and I appreciate that, even with a COVID blip. But I have a question about that first session being held while the kids are in school and what led to that decision, because that was difficult, I think, for my kid. His 8th grade, there wasn't a lot going on, but I was really grateful he wasn't taking this like when he was a freshman, worrying about finals and all of that. And I know he doesn't want to do it again while it's concurrent with school. So what are the options there? Because we're talking about, when we were talking about the summer academy, it's not the easy way to get it. It's not. It's a lot of focus, a lot of time, because you're compressing so much information into a smaller amount of time. And I appreciate that, because it was good for his work ethic. But some kids have a harder time with that than others.
Right. Thank you for your question. The reason behind the overlap on the second semester is because we knew that the credit recovery courses in person were more of a condensed curriculum, where we had to use some very specific strategies to identify what was deficient with those students in person. So they didn't necessarily receive every single piece of curriculum in a normal class throughout the semester. They were receiving curriculum that was specific for their needs, and so hence it was termed as credit recovery. The online courses, however, were a full curriculum of Edgenuity classes, and so to condense it more than 4 weeks at the time, we felt like it would have been very difficult for students to compress that to a smaller time frame to fit both sessions into a summer session. So the decision was made to overlap the first one, knowing that we would overlap, but that we know that a lot of students participate in credit recovery courses in an 8th hour, and that it was possible to complete in a 4-week season concurrently with the second semester, which might show, why we had a 75% success rate in the first session versus the second session at 90%. So I think all that coming forward is more communication to say, this is what it looks like, if it's the same model that we use in 2023.
That's great, and I really appreciate how you reflected and pivoted on some things so quickly for that second session, and had such a high success rate. I think it's really great to see what you've presented to us and what you were able to do for our students. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Member James. Vice President Montero?
Well, thank you. I just want to echo what everyone else has said. I know Member Barraza addressed the question that I had about that initial point of contact with a lot of our students, especially after the study session that we just had around interventions, for academic achievement, especially with what we've experienced these past couple of years. I think this is a great tool, to be able to catch some of our students up, especially those that have been severely impacted by the pandemic. And I'm glad that you brought up the point about communication, because coming from someone that's been in our classrooms recently, there's kind of this unfortunate and inaccurate stigma that's associated with summer school around a lot of students. And I think a lot of them don't know a lot of the great opportunities that come out of that with the Math Academy, et cetera, around really what summer school is. And I think having that communication to a lot of our students will be able to cast a wider net to bring more students into that program. Thank you.
And I think one of the lessons we learned from first session to second session was, rather than sending an email to students, all the communication we sent to students as reminders went out as text messages. And so, we shifted that focus almost 100% to that. Also email, yeah.
Are we going to be able to keep the Dynamo team?
That's still under review.
Okay, I hope so.
No, thank you. And then I just want to do a quick shout out to former board member Helm, because she and I really fought to make sure that this was something that was accessible to all of our students, regardless of cost. And so I really am grateful for working with her on that, because we're seeing the fruit of that work and that we helped start. And so thank you all for continuing that. And as a new board to shepherd in, I hope that continues. But I have nothing else unless you do, Dr. Mendenhall.
I have nothing else
Great.
to contribute.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. And team.
All right, next we will go into section I for board policies. Item number 1, policy HAC, release time for teacher leader for first reading. And we do have public comment, and so we will start with that first, with Rodrigo Palacios.
I wish I had a fancy PowerPoint that I could click with, but good evening, Dr. Mendeville, President Garcia, members of the board, leadership team. My name is Rodrigo Palacios. I am the new president of TSCA. I wanted to formally introduce myself. I know most of you in here. And I want to speak real quick on policy HAC. We had a wonderful conversation last week with Dr. Keller, Dr. Mendeville, with Jordan. And so TSCA fully supports the changes to policy HAC. We believe that it clarifies some nuances and some potential areas of concern, and so we are in full support of adding the additional language to it. On that note, as I begin my presidency, I want to point out that I look forward to working with the leadership, to collaborating, and to continuing to work in mutual respect to move our district forward, to support our teachers, because we know that happy teachers stay. And that is the most important thing that we can do here. In my role as president is to support you in your role in hiring and retaining good teachers. And so I look forward to working with you every single day as long as I'm president. Thank you for everything.
Rodrigo, thank you, first of all, for your comments. I want to reflect on the conversation we had with legal counsel and Dr. Keller and all that. And one of the things that I really appreciate about you and about the relationship that Tempe Union has with our teachers is that through that discussion, we were able to, in my eyes, very clearly see, okay, there's not a need for any change to this other than the bottom part when there may be 2 leaders, we each get a release period. But what struck me the most, I'm not sure if you said it or one of the attorneys, but I think it was you, and it was finding a way through your work and through your interactions to understand, truly understand the needs of our teachers. Because sometimes I don't know that we have the best of intentions, and I believe you know that, but we may not always get it right. So I'm looking forward to that discovery so we can really help our teachers be their absolute best. As we look at some of the data earlier in the board meeting, we have some work to do, and I know our teachers are ready and will be rising to the occasion to ensure that our students are achieving at their best levels. I'm looking forward to that, and so I'm just proud to know you're taking on the helm, and we're going to do some good work together.
Thank you, Dr. Mendenville. And just to piggyback on that, I think, we can only, I was literally having this lesson in class today about points of view, historical points of view, right? We can only know what we know. And so one of my goals as president is to be proactive and to be responsive to the needs of my members, right, our members, and to be able to then have that honest conversation with you and with leadership about what it is that our certified staff needs. I appreciate the sentiment. I share it with you.
Great, because I'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good.
All right, there we go. Member James.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rodrigo. We're excited about your presidency, and I am glad that our district is committing to the 2 release periods. The work of a strong association president is tireless, and it's extremely important. And I think every district should want a strong association. Every district needs a strong association, because when the association is strong, we have good communication with our governing board, our leadership, superintendency. And I've come from strong associations, and it's some of the best work, most important and exciting work I've ever done. And I think that under your leadership and with the support of the district, I know that we will see TSCA really blossom, and I look forward to seeing how our district can continue to support the association and working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Member James, and I echo all of that as well. And I also want to thank you for all your time and effort and work, because I know it's not easy, certainly, especially now in public education, especially in Arizona. So grateful that everyone's able to recognize it and move forward together. But thank you all so much for your time. And I will say, from a personal point of privilege, I wish I got to work with you more, but I'm grateful that you are in this role and get to work together with the board moving forward. I don't have anything else as board members do. All right, hearing none, seeing none. Dr. Mendenville? All right. Then I move approval of I-1 policy. Oh, sorry, this is our first read. We're going to come back for second. This is, yes. I'm just excited about the policy, y'all. I'm ready to go. This is done.
We can't do it in the first one?
We don't have it listed as a action
second,
item.
okay.
It's only listed as discussion information. I'm right there with you, Member Hodge. Ready to go. Having said that, we will continue on with the agenda with business services. Next, we have J1, approval of contract renewals for fiscal year 2022-2023. Dr. Mendenville.
Thank you, President Garcia. Vice President Montero, members of the board. The administration brings forward these policy changes. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. The contract, it didn't switch over. Here we are. It's this particular item of renewal of contracts for fiscal year 22 is a standard operating procedure. We have some through the purchasing department and renewals for the following contracts. These are multi-year contracts through the RFP and invitation for bid process. These are vendors that we use as one time only. I'll give an example with McGraw-Hill with a math reading intervention. Some of our supplemental plumbing and HVAC repair and maintenance services now that we are contracting those services outside. So there's an ongoing, continual attention to our plumbing and HVAC system. So this is common or typical annual contract renewals that the administration recommends the approval.
Thank you, Dr. Mendel. Board members, any comments or questions? Member Braza?
Just run one really quick for Dr. Mendel. The salary compensation study, JV reward system, is that still occurring? I thought we finished that.
Member Baraza, the JB rewards is listed in the event we need to use them for their consulting services when we begin the budget advisory committee process in January. So, and they're used as a reference, and we may not need them. We have completed the salary review for all of our employee groups with our teachers, our classified support, our hourly, and our administrators. That doesn't mean we won't have to address them again because the cycles of review for salary compensation are becoming, there's less time between those studies. And so we have to be competitive with the market, the current market, not just the East Valley, but in other areas. And so we have these here as a means for us to draw on their professional services.
Okay, I appreciate that. So it's a retainment cost, associated with, we're likely going to need them in the future. All right, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Member Braza. Board members, any other comments or questions on this item? All right, hearing none, seeing none, I move approval of J1. May I have a second, please?
I second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have J2, approval of cooperative contract usage for fiscal year 2022-2023. Dr. Mendeville?
Thank you, President Garcia, Vice President Montero, members of the board. This, similar to J1, but these are renewals, but they're cooperative contract usage for this school year. Mostly food product services, your ongoing goods services like AV equipment, scoreboards, those kinds of costs that we are approving through a cooperative contract for this school year for these items listed. Administration recommends the approval of J2.
Thanks so much, Dr. Mendel. Board members, any comments or questions on this item? All right, hearing none, seeing none, I move approval of J2. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have J3, approval of agreement with Stand for Children Leadership Center for the Center for High School Success and the sole source procurement determination. Dr. Mendeville?
Thank you, President Garcia, Vice President Montero, members of the board. This Stand for Children Leadership Centers project it's a high quality and reputable organization, and they focus and they want to partner with the district, not just Desert Vista, and I want to be real clear with that. But it monitors ninth graders so that they complete their first year of high school on track. So they're on track for graduation, which goes in direct alignment with our goals to make sure we have the targeted support. So when our freshmen in their freshman year, and there's a lot of research around when our freshmen are successful their freshman year and obtain all their credits, their likelihood of graduation really goes much, much higher when they have that year of success and not so much struggle. Stand for Children, it's a great project. We offered it to all schools. Desert Vista right now, because of, it had begun through the initiation of, with Ms. White when she was the Director of Instructional Services. I am recommending that several schools continue or be a part of this grant project, and the funds will be used to pay are going to be through ESSER 3. So it's my hope that we can get Tempe High and Marcos on board with this project, because it's, again, targeted and in direct alignment with what our goals are to make sure that our students remain on trajectory for graduation in 4 years.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manville. Member Hodge?
I just have one question. Can we get progress, like, coming updates on how well it's going, how the process is going throughout the time?
Yes, because I think that's part of their plan, is that they have targeted individuals identified to monitor these freshmen and monitor the freshmen coming in. And it really parallels with the work that we do with our MTSS teams and our high watch lists. They've seen our planning, our systems of support through MTSS, and it aligns beautifully with their work. So yes, that's part of the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Hodge. Member James?
When do you think the other schools will implement this? Because we just had our conversation about subgroups and where we can put our money and our budgeting, and we know Desert Vista, and I know there are students at Desert Vista that need this assistance, and it will be good to see how it goes into effect. But when we're looking at how we're budgeting, looking at our high need schools with subgroups that need extra academic intervention, like, I would love to see these kind of funds being put into those specific
They're
targeted
already
groups.
earmarked for them. So
What is the schedule?
The funds are there. The funds are not the issue because they're funded through ESSER. The schools have to get on board with a lot of the responsibilities and some of the program goals and the work. And so if Tempe High or Marcos were here today, they would be hearing it straight from me that this is, I'm saying it right now, that this is an expectation, and it fits perfectly with what we need to accomplish for both those schools.
Thanks so much, Member James. And to build off of that, because I'm looking at the agreement, particularly Section 8, where the cost of services, it addresses that it's going to be for the 2022-23 and the 23-24 school years, and it only has Desert Vista designated. And so to build off of Member James's point, and to, I guess, ask clarification as to when do we expect to have Tempe and Marcos added, because to the presentation earlier, our goal as to get to levels of excellence, this doesn't really align with that in terms of the timing for the school years. And it seems, granted, we can always come back and amend or supersede the agreements, but I just want to be mindful that I don't want to start in 25 for the other two.
Mrs. Silvers?
President Garcia, members of the board, when we met with all of the different sites under the direction of Dr. Mandeville, many of the sites already had their goals and their plans established for the school year. They wanted to have Desert Vista start this, pilot this, and then look at doing that for next school year. And so this was, part of it was the timing of when this was coming forward, that they had already done some planning on other things.
If I may add, because while I appreciate that is something with the timing, I respect that, but I also think that this falls directly in line with some of the work they're currently doing, so it just may complement. I think if they've understood a little bit more of what the grant and what stand for leadership in monitoring the cohort, I think it could complement both those schools beautifully with. So I don't think we'll have any problems with that, but we will be talking with those principals next week anyway. So.
There's some advanced planning that needs to occur, master schedules, teachers' prep time all need to be the same, and so there would be some major things that you need to plan for in advance in order to do this.
For any school participating.
For any school, for any school.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, especially because I think at the timing right now for advanced planning, especially as we move to the new calendar, I just want to be mindful because this does go into the 23 and 24 school year. So as we're looking at that, just kind of looking at that. Member James, and then followed by Member Braza.
Okay, so to clarify, if, say, Marcos and Tempe got on board with this grant, would this be the same length of time, or have they missed out on a year? Are we losing money? What, you know, like, because you said the money's there,
Yeah,
and we're not we're not using it.
They wouldn't lose a year. They just need to start in tandem with Desert Vista, because
But
Desert Vista hasn't even begun.
Right, so
You
it
know.
says, but 22 to 24.
The grant is for 2 years.
Okay, so
Funding, that's the whole, they do this work, Stand for Children, for cost. The grant is just happening to pay. Now, the caveat with that is that we're using ESSER funds right now. If the program is successful, which I believe it will be for our freshman cohorts, then we will look, to your point, to encumber district funds to support that beyond the 24 school year for any participating schools.
Okay, so just to clarify, Desert Vista is on this agreement, it says 22, 24. If Tempe High and Marcos jump on,
It would be
23,
22,
25, yeah.
It would
They would
be-
have that support through those years.
Though, that's a detail we need to iron out, but I'm thinking they would be through the same 2 years.
They would have 2 years.
And more than that, if we see success and it's impacting our students in a favorable way, of course, we're going to continue that, and we will find the funds to do that. We're not talking about exorbitant dollars here, so we can come up with those funds for that. Yes. Dr. Wilson?
Yes, sorry, because Ms. Hilgers, Mr. Carranza, and I were all in that meeting, so we can just revise the agreement to include additional schools.
Well, and I revised that initially because that was part of our verb language in there, because I want to make sure we could include, because I knew we could, the additional schools, the title schools. So we're fine, is what I'm telling you.
Got it. Thank you so much, both of you, and Mr. Carranza and Ms. Hilgers as well. Member Braza.
If we're looking at Desert Vista as a pilot program, and we're looking for other schools to get on board, is there an opportunity? I know that CHSS will train up to 15 staff members. Is that particularly Desert Vista staff, or can we maybe have some input from the other schools so that way they can maybe also address their concerns with CHSS and say, well, when we bring it to this school, this is what we're dealing with and so forth. So they can be a part of the growth of that pilot program and be able to shape it. That way it's applicable for what we're doing at each of the individual schools. Just being mindful that each school has their own, history, culture, the way of just kind of having their own community. And I know that nothing, with student achievement or models like this can be very cookie cutter.
Yeah, Member Barraza, I can assure you that Stand for Children Leadership is aching to get into Tempe Union High School District for our qualifying schools. And so whatever we can do to ensure that the same timeline, structure, organization, funds are following those cohorts at all 3 schools, that's our goal. It doesn't mean that it stops after 2 years just because it's funded by ESSER 3. We just continue that with other district funds if we're seeing the benefit, which I think we will with our freshman cohorts.
I think we will. And honestly, at the end of the day, if we're going to bring it to Marcos, for example, what does that look like? Are they going to be learning this on the spot? What type of, I'd like for them to kind of have the wheels turning. So that way, by the time they look at it and they say it's palatable for us, we think there's a lot of
It's very
benefit.
structured support that and targeted to our 9th grade families, not just the students, but it's working with tutoring, with bridging programs they're working with families. A lot of what we do as support complements this work. This just strengthens it even more because they have targeted individuals that do that specific work.
I like that they're doing quarterly collaboratives and, assessments quarterly. If we can kind of get that information as a board, that would be very helpful for us to see kind of how the program's running in itself. Thank you, that's all.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Member Braza. Member Hutch?
I just have one quick question. How would we get our other schools to qualify? So I see you say Tempe High and Mountain and Marcos and Desert Vista. So why isn't it that Mountain Point doesn't qualify for it, or?
All of our schools qualify.
Oh, okay. So that's what I was wanting to make sure. I was like, how is it?
We look at, I think the two schools that probably need some more attention are the schools that I've identified already.
Okay, I get that. But
Desert Vista was just taking the lead to kind of work out through some of these bugs, and
yeah, because
whenever you're taking charge.
Yeah, because that kind of got me when you had Desert Vista and then you had Tempe High and Mountain Point. I'm like, Marcos Neal was like, wait a minute, maybe I'm missing something on the last couple of slides we got, but I thought it would be Mountain Point would be next. Okay, thank you. That makes more sense. All right.
Well, you're right.
I love it. We're all on it. We're all on it. Board members, any other comments or questions? All right, hearing none, seeing none, I move approval of J3. May I have a second, please?
I second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have Section K for new business. Item number 1, proposed 2023 ASBA political agenda. And this is specifically regarding having our district delegate to the ASBA Delegate Assembly for us to discuss and consider how we would like Vice President Montero to represent us. So I will pass it over to Vice President Montero.
Thank you. So I had the opportunity to talk with Member James, who's our alternate delegate this year. We went through some of the proposed changes, and I think the best way to do this is we'll kind of go through some of our concerns or suggestions on what we have here, and if there are any objections or comments on those, then we can move from there. So we'll start on the first item where they're striking nationally and locally competitive salaries. We didn't see the need or rationale for doing that. I think in relation to when we're talking about comparative salaries, I think it's a good objective as a state to have nationally competitive salaries. The second concern we had was item 3. They're suggesting adding language to modernize the constitutional aggregate expenditure limit. We thought that it would be best to include language to say to eliminate the constitutional aggregate expenditure limit. I can't say that word today. Expenditure limit, just given, I think, we think this is just kicking the issue down the road, and as the level of education spending continues to rise, I think it'd be best to advocate to eliminate the expenditure limit altogether. Let's see, what else did we have? On section 4, item 5, they strike the language, oppose any measure that result in fewer qualified voters from being easily able to vote or register to vote. We thought that they were toning down the language by adding support policy that encourages all eligible voters to exercise the right to participate in elections. We didn't see the need to change that. We want to keep the original language around that, just given when we're talking about barriers and access to voting, it's hard. We were able to encourage voters, but without having with having institutional barriers in place, we don't see the point in adding that language there in the first place. So we would advocate to keep that there. Other concern we had is they added section 5 around Arizona's role in remote schools, and they moved the language that said equitably invest in technology and reliable internet access for all students, which was originally in section 1. A concern I had around that is, while that's something that I know a lot of our rural and remote schools are facing, it's not an issue that is unique to rural and remote schools. And I know that's something that we have discussed a lot here as a district, and making sure that we are equitably investing in our technologies, specifically our one-on-one initiative with our laptops for all students. So we would advocate in keeping that back in where it originally was in section 1. I think that was all I had. If you had something, Member James.
It was in section 3, and I think it was point 5. Point 2. Point 2, continue reforming English language learner models of instruction to increase integration of English learners and give schools flexibility and resources to administer them. And I think that if we're looking toward improving our English language learners' experiences in our schools, we also need to include that we are advocating for the repeal of Prop 203, since we are the only state that has that English-only law on the books at this point. So I'd like to see that as partnered in this point.
Okay, that's all the changes that we had, so if you have any suggestions or have any feedback on how you'd want us to act on those, if that's good to you, then
It's great.
we'll go with that.
No, and I think it would also be helpful to give you all authority to, should you see a reason to wanting to add an item to the proposed political agenda or amend, or suggest amendment, that you also have that authority as well.
I agree.
All right. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? No? All right. Just want to be clear. Yeah, I was just wanting to make sure that I had here what I needed. All right, so I move to approve the direction and edits and suggestions that both Vice President Montero and Member James have to the political agenda, in addition to have authority to act as they see fit at the delegate assembly. May I have a second?
I second it.
Thank you so much, Member Hodge. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have information item only. We have two of them. The first one is that we're planning to have our governing board and superintendent retreat scheduled for Tuesday and Wednesday, September 13th and 14th. It is scheduled to be here in the governing boardroom. Our next is our financial report through August 12th, 2022. Again, as a reminder, this is for information only. And we are heading to the very end of our meeting. Oh.
Can we ask
yes.
one question?
Yes.
The one question is about our retreat. Is it all day? Can you give us a little bit more to time?
Yeah, so it'll be similar to what other board meetings are scheduled. So depending on folks' schedule, start time between 5 to 6 or 7. Yeah. So
Okay.
Dr. Mendel and I will help coordinate and work with y'all to
That
have
sounds
that
good.
ready to go.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thanks, Member Hodge. Finally, we have our communications from governing board members. All right, who would like to go first?
Don't look
This
at
is
me.
always a thing.
No, not me.
Member Braza.
It's wonderful to see so many faces here in our boardroom tonight in our meeting. Wonderful presentations, and I'm not going to take any time. I know it was a tough start to a week for one of our schools and for our Tempe Union District families. So I really appreciate the effort that I've been seeing from the district to be able to get students resources, counseling, and somebody to talk to. It's really refreshing. My nephew was also one of those students that, counselors reached out to. That was his friend. And so he's going through a lot, and I love the fact that I see the district reaching out constantly to him. In fact, Berdetta and I was on Marco's campus today, and along with Sean, and I did see my nephew, and that's how I knew, because I saw him at the counselor's office and asked him, how he's doing, and that really made me feel good, that we're always staying on top of it. So thank you to the district, and your teams, Sean, your team, for making sure that, these incidents, when they occur, that we don't just move forward without understanding context and the situation. The football field, we toured the football field, Burdette and I, Marcos Denise. It looks like it's a couple of weeks ahead of schedule. And we got to talk to some of the construction crews. It was really, really fascinating for me to always see those projects. I really, really love watching them. And it's hard for me to believe that in 2 weeks from now, it's going to be near completion, if not completely completed, just because, it's hard to gauge construction when you're seeing it still as dirt. So I wish everyone, a lot of love and peace to all of you and your families. And, let's have a wonderful school year. Football season is coming up. I'm looking forward to it. It's always my favorite time to catch up with everyone in the community. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Member Raza.
Okay.
Member Hodge.
I guess I'm not first. All right. I just want to say thank you to soon to be Dr. McDonald, Sean McDonald, for taking us around today. I'm starting to visit the schools. I didn't get a chance to do it the first week of school because I was ill, and now I'm feeling better, so I'll go and start to say my welcomes to the schools. And I just want to tell everybody, welcome back to school. Our executive team, we have the best executive team in the country. President Garcia and I got a chance to go to we went to another conference, and we got a chance to brag on how well our machine runs in our district. And I'm just proud to say that I'm part of the best district in the country. On that, we also, I was with Tempe Connect. I'm part of that now on my other capacity on the city council, but I'm getting the chance to work more with our counselors on that, and just to see a phenomenal job of how engaged and how it encompasses our schools. So I want to give a shout out to all of our counselors on how well they do. And I was with Vice President Martego and Member James and Dr. Mendeville yesterday with Career Ready through the city, and it's a partnership with the city and also with the Tempe Chamber of Commerce. I couldn't even say the word. And they partner and they bring our high school students in to give them internships throughout the different businesses in the state. And it's what's great about it is our counselors help to find the students who want to do it, but the students get to interview the businesses that they sit and they actually work for. So it's a great project, and I want to congratulate all of our graduates who did, was it 8 weeks? Was it 8 weeks? 8 weeks of over the summer with internships they did. So congratulations to all of them. We had them all throughout the city. Each one of our Tempe schools, Mountain Point and Desert Vista, but our Tempe schools received an internship. So congratulations on that. And I think that's about it. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Night.
Thank you, Member Hodge. Vice President Montero.
Thank you. I'll echo everything else that everyone has said and welcome everyone here. It's good to see so many people in the boardroom tonight, and want to wish you all a happy new school year. I had the chance on the first day to go to all of our schools with Dr. Mendeville and visit some classrooms, talk to some students and talk to some teachers, and just see the level of excitement that's among our staff and students. It's my highlight every time to go and see and visit our classrooms and be able to just see all the level of activity in our classrooms and our excitement in our students, and especially the emphasis that we had these past 2 years with the connection building and just seeing all the different creative ways that our students and staff are collaborating to get to know one another and build those connections as we start the school year. I also wanted to thank Mr. McDonald and Mr. Denny for taking the chance to meet with me yesterday, getting an update on where we are in terms of our second year of implementation of our mental health policy. We're doing some really great work, and I can't thank you enough for all that you're doing to support the social emotional wellness of our students and continuing to build that infrastructure that will last quite a long time. I also had the chance to visit the Career Ready Tempe event with Member Hodge, Member James, and Dr. Mendeville last night, and so I wanted to say congratulations to all of our students. And lastly, wanted to recognize our gifts and donations. We only have one this time. It is a $16 to Desert Vista from Tricia Rothery, so thank you so much. That is all I have.
Thank you so much, Vice President Montero. Member James.
Yeah, I wanted to just express my sympathy to the families that were affected by the death of one of our Marcus Deniza students, and to thank the administration there as well, because it's evident that Principal Brown is reaching out to families and taking calls, and I've spoken with him about it. My son is in his second full week at Marcos, and I think I can see that that's where he needs to be. He's finding his voice and his passions at Marcos, and I think that he couldn't have a better administration to help guide him through that. And I really appreciated the study session today. I want to emphasize, if anybody missed it, looking at all of the data was overwhelming, but it was so informative. Ms. Hilgers, I really appreciate what you and your team put together. And to be able to center our conversations around our kids who are struggling the most and need the most interventions. And as Member Hodge said, looking at thinking outside the box, what are the things that we can do? And I think one of the things we kind of failed to discuss was we really need to look at true representation in our schools and really digging into what our kids need so they all feel represented and heard. Because when they feel like their culture, their families are a part of the school, then they are more likely to succeed. So I know that that's a lot of work, and I know y'all are up for it, so we really appreciate that. And kind of along the same lines, I appreciate the folks that came in and spoke tonight, because we're looking at academic success, and that should be our focus. And we should not have anything in our schools that's taking anybody out of the classroom for reasons that aren't substantive. So as we're looking at things like the dress code, it does relate to academic success, because we will see our girls being pulled out more if we're going to enforce a dress code that maybe doesn't align with our values. So thank you for the input, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their week.
Thank you so much, Member James, and I echo a lot of, not everything that fellow board members have shared, especially with, sending our condolences to the family of the student that we lost. It's always difficult anytime that we get a news from Dr. Mendeville of any student and any challenges that we're facing. So I'm grateful that for Marco's administration, but also the teams that were dispatched to support all of our students, because that's, mourning a fellow student is very difficult. But also wanting to thank everyone who came out and spoke, especially about the dress code. It's as a member, I couldn't put it better than Member James, and I think it's really important to recognize that and raise it as best we can. And I know that there's work forthcoming, so thank you, Member James, for amplifying. As Member Hodge mentioned, went to go to a conference together, got to highlight Tempe Union frequently, and got to celebrate Tempe Union and everything that's happening here. So as a hot bench that we may be from time to time and grill y'all with questions and suggestions, it is truly for putting forward the excellence in educations that we all expect for our district and our students. I want to say a quick thank you to Vice President Montero for stepping in last meeting. I had a number of client emergencies happen at the same time that did not allow me to be here last meeting, so thank you, Vice President Montero, for stepping in. It was like a very quick change, so I really appreciate it. And then looking forward to, on Friday, going with Dr. Mendeville and Representative Hernandez and making some school visits at the end of the week. So that is all I have for y'all. Dr. Mendeville, do you have any updates, or does the executive team?
No, I do want to thank those who shared this evening with us about the concerns that you have expressed, and I appreciate the professionalism, the research, the just putting some time into it. And together, when we work together as partners, we can accomplish a lot more. And that's what I look forward to the most on any endeavor, and this just happens to be the one with the dress code. But if we partner together and we act in a responsive, caring way and focus on what our students need, we can accomplish a heck of a lot more when we do it that way. So I just want to appreciate that. And I want to echo with I have 5, I think, one of the best boards around, and yeah, you're a lot of energy, I'll just tell you that. But I always know, and I tell this to everybody, and I'm being serious when I say this, that you all have caring hearts and you care immensely for what happens in those classrooms and with our students. For that, I'm eternally grateful. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mendenville. All right, our next regular meeting is scheduled for September 21st, 2022. I move to adjourn. May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any